The Subcommittee on Emergency Preparedness, Recovery, and Response will be in order. Without objection, the chair is authorized to declare the subcommittee in recess at any point. Good morning, everyone. Our hearing today is a continuation of a very important topic that the subcommittee examined on January 20th, the Federal Emergency Management Agency's workforce. I am pleased that FEMA Deputy Director Eric Hooks is joining our hearing this morning. As we all know, the most valuable resources of any organization are the men and women on the ground executing the mission. FEMA's workforce works nonstop to help those in need, and I am so grateful for their dedication to their mission. As a former law enforcement officer and as a member of Congress now, I have personally seen the incredible work FEMA has done to support Floridians in the wake of disasters like Hurricane Charlie, Francis, Ivan, Jean in 2004, and Hurricane Irma in 2017. In recent years, FEMA has faced unprecedented challenges and growing responsibilities that have taken a toll on the agency's workforce. FEMA has risen to the challenge of meeting an expanded mission scope, helping with everything from the resettlement of Afghan evacuees to responding to record-breaking natural disasters. As the threat of climate change continues to grow, sadly, severe weather is becoming the new normal, a reality that will only further add stressors to FEMA's already burdened workload. The demands of climate change puts on the FEMA workforce, or the demands that climate change puts on the FEMA workforce are unprecedented. That increase in disaster declaration in recent years reflects a significant increase in FEMA's workload. Compared to the 1960s, when there was on average 18 disasters every year, we saw 104 major disaster declarations in 2020 and 58 major disasters declarations in 2021. Furthermore, the COVID-19 response continues to be a part of FEMA's workload. A U.S. Government Accountability Office report found that over half of FEMA's public assistant workforce had spent time working on the COVID-19 response for their primary duty station, meaning that fewer FEMA employees can focus on long-term recovery for existing projects. Regularly, new challenges and threats arise, stressing the importance of FEMA's mission. For example, FEMA's workforce also plays a central role in ensuring our communities are protected from man-made threats through the administration of several grant programs, including the Nonprofit Security Grant Program. The recent spat of bomb threats against historically Black colleges and universities, along with houses of worship, emphasize the importance of the Nonprofit Security Grant Program in guarding our communities against the terrorist attacks and the extent that we depend on the FEMA workforce to provide these critical resources. Increased responsibilities and crisis have led to challenges with recruitment, training, and retention. These workforce challenges have the potential to jeopardize FEMA's ability to meet the mission. In recent years, FEMA has taken important steps to grow its workforce. Between fiscal year 2016 and 2021, the FEMA workforce grew by almost 8,000 employees, a significant achievement. However, FEMA still has work to do in reaching its target staffing levels. FEMA relies on reservist employees that are called upon to temporarily respond to disasters as they arise. However, given training restraints and the lack of employment protections and benefits for these employees, FEMA has struggled to maintain the strongest reservist workforce. FEMA has also taken steps to build a more inclusive and diverse workforce that better reflects the communities it serves. Similarly, FEMA committed to additional accountability initiatives to combat workplace harassment and discrimination. I applaud Administrator Criswell's prioritization of the FEMA workforce within the 2022 to 2026 strategic plan. Furthermore, under the Biden administration, FEMA has emphasized a new focus on equity, central to which is ensuring a diverse and inclusive workforce that represents the diversity of American communities that it seeks to serve. And with that, I am very pleased to welcome FEMA's Deputy Administrator Eric Hooks before the committee today. And I look forward to hearing about FEMA's work to support its workforce and hear how Congress can best support the agency and its mission. The chair now recognizes the ranking member of the Emergency Preparedness, Response, and Recovery Subcommittee, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kamek, for an opening statement.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman Demings, and thank you to my colleagues for joining us for this important hearing today. Now, before I begin, I do want to take a moment to recognize all of the hardworking men and women at FEMA. We truly cannot thank you enough for your extraordinary work and dedication in some of our nation's toughest times of need. So thank you. Now, a little bit of a month ago, this subcommittee held a hearing to discuss the challenges facing the FEMA workforce. During that hearing, we heard testimony from representatives from GAO and RAND, and from former FEMA Administrator Craig Fugate, who I am proud to say is a constituent of mine and calls the Gator Nation home. Now, during the course of the hearing, much of our discussion centered around how FEMA's mission sets have grown in recent years. FEMA has led the government's response to the COVID-19 pandemic, assisted in the Afghan refugee resettlement efforts, and provided operational support to the Department of Health and Human Services with unaccompanied children crossing the border. FEMA has been called upon to handle these new challenges, all while facing an unprecedented number of natural disasters. That hearing, unfortunately, did little to alleviate my concern that while FEMA employees are incredibly capable and resilient, these multiple mission sets and the abundance of natural disasters are exhausting the workforce, creating burnout. I do recognize that employee burnout is an issue that FEMA Administrator Criswell has been working to address. So it is my hope that during this hearing today, we will learn some about the proactive steps the agency is taking to remedy this problem. In addition to discussing these multiple mission sets, we also heard from RAND about a survey they conducted on harassment and discrimination in the FEMA workplace. The survey found that of the personnel that completed the survey, about 29% of employees experienced sex, race, or ethnicity-based discrimination. The survey also found that women were more likely to experience a civil rights violation, that rates of civil rights violations varied significantly across the different FEMA offices. As a result of this survey, FEMA published a Culture Improvement Action Plan, which was designed to increase employee awareness of the RAND survey results and provide transparent communication of workforce culture objectives. FEMA also made anti-sexual harassment training mandatory across the agency. Now, I applaud the steps that FEMA has taken to address this serious issue, and I look forward to hearing more from Deputy Administrator Hooks today about how the culture at the agency has improved. It is also my understanding that RAND has conducted a second survey, and I look forward to reviewing those results when they are published. We also heard testimony from GAO, who have conducted a number of reports over the years examining the FEMA workforce. The GAO reports focused on a number of specific concerns, including staffing shortages and FEMA's challenges in deploying staff with the right qualifications and skills at the right times to meet disaster needs. Both GAO and former FEMA Administrator Fugate's testimony highlighted the difficulties that FEMA has had in growing and developing their reservist workforce. Ensuring a well-trained reservist workforce is essential, given that they often compromise some of the greatest proportion of FEMA staff in the field during a disaster. Now, before I yield back, Mr. Curie from GAO brought up one point during that hearing that has really stuck with me. He highlighted that FEMA is currently managing almost 1,000 prior disasters that are in some stage of recovery today. That means that FEMA is still dealing with disasters from 5, 10, and even 15 years ago. As we look at ways to strengthen and improve the FEMA workforce, I believe it is critical that we also look at ways to update some of FEMA's policies and procedures to help address existing backlogs. Addressing this backlog and the reasons behind it will help communities recover faster and also will help alleviate some of the pressure on the FEMA workforce. Because as the past few years have shown, there is no longer a down season for disasters. I look forward to hearing from Deputy Administrator Hooks today regarding these challenges facing FEMA and about the steps that the agency is taking to move forward in a positive manner. And with that, I yield back to the Chairwoman, Ms. Demings from the great state of Florida, and I yield back.
The chair thanks the ranking member, Ms. Kamek. Members are reminded that the committee will operate according to the guidelines laid out by the chairman and ranking member in their February 3rd colloquy regarding remote procedures. Without objection, members not on the subcommittee shall be permitted to sit and question the witnesses. I now welcome our witness, Mr. Eric Hooks, Deputy Administrator of the FEMA, a Federal Emergency Management Agency. In July of 2021, Mr. Hooks was appointed by President Biden for the role of Deputy Administrator. He was confirmed by the United States Senate in December of 2021. Prior to his time at FEMA, Mr. Hooks spent over 30 years in public service in his home state of North Carolina, where he focused on public safety, law enforcement, and emergency management. In 2017, Mr. Hooks was appointed by Governor Cooper to be North Carolina's Secretary of Public Safety and Homeland Security Advisor, where he led the state's disaster mitigation, response, and recovery efforts. Mr. Deputy Administrator, I understand that this is your first time testifying since your confirmation. Welcome, and we look forward to your testimony. Without objection, the witness's full statement will be inserted in the record. I now ask Deputy Administrator Hooks to summarize his statement for 5 minutes. Okay, we apparently have some technical difficulties. We are going to recess just for a couple of minutes. I ask the members to please stand by. We will notify when we are back up. Thank you. Authorize your statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Demings, Ranking Member Kamek, and members of the subcommittee. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss FEMA's ongoing efforts to bolster our nation's emergency management workforce and describe how the agency's new strategic plan guides this priority. FEMA's mission of helping people before, during, and after disasters has never been more critical. The field of emergency management is at a pivotal moment due to the tremendous change in our nation's risk landscape. In the last 2 years alone, FEMA has faced historic natural disasters, a nationwide COVID-19 pandemic, and other challenging missions. Our workforce of nearly 22,000 emergency managers does exceptional work every day, and ensuring their continued readiness and well-being is a priority for Administrator Criswell and for me. I will briefly describe FEMA's ongoing efforts to bolster our workforce and broader emergency management community within the context of 3 strategic goals in our strategic plan. Our first strategic goal is to instill equity as a foundation of emergency management. We know disasters, both natural and otherwise, impact
Deputy Administrator, I am so sorry to interrupt you. I need to officially do a countdown to officially declare us out of recess. So if you would just bear with me. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The Subcommittee on Emergency Response and Preparedness is now out of recess and is reconvening. Deputy Administrator, back to you. Thank you.
Thank you. We know disasters, both natural and otherwise, impact people and communities differently based on geography, demographics, and historical and cultural characteristics. These unique contexts require tailored solutions designed to meet their unique needs. Underserved communities often suffer disproportionately from disasters. By instilling equity as a foundation of emergency management, we can break this cycle and build a more resilient nation. FEMA is committed to ensuring our employees increasingly reflect the diversity of the nation. In alignment with our strategic plan, FEMA is working to recruit individuals from underrepresented communities. This includes partnering with organizations such as historically Black colleges and universities to help create hiring pipelines into the field of emergency management. The agency will also continue to invest in professional development for all FEMA employees to foster an environment where individuals feel safe, valued, and empowered. Our second strategic goal is to lead the whole of community in climate resilience. Administrator Criswell has called climate change the crisis of our generation. In 2020 alone, there were a record 22 weather and climate-related disaster events across the United States whose losses exceeded $1 billion. 2022 was a close second. The growing severity of these events increases the time it takes for communities to recover, and this process can be further complicated by repeated disasters in areas already struggling to bounce back from past events. In this regard, I would like to thank Congress for providing FEMA with additional resources to mitigate the impact of climate change by passing the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act, which includes funding for grants to establish revolving loan funds and additional resources for FEMA's Hazard Mitigation Assistance Grant Program. Our third strategic goal is to promote and sustain a ready FEMA and a prepared nation. The increase in frequency, severity, and complexity of disasters has heightened demands on FEMA's workforce and on those across the larger emergency management community. To adapt to that trend, FEMA must expand its approach to agency readiness and national preparedness. This expansion necessitates an increase in the nation's overall emergency management capabilities at all levels of government and society. Through FEMA's for domestic preparedness, the agency is working to make training available to emergency managers where they are at any time in their careers. Internally, FEMA is also taking steps to improve our ability to meet the increasing number of current and emerging threats requiring federal support. As we implement the new strategic plan and prepare for what lies ahead, our workforce has never been more experienced or tested. Since joining the agency in December of 2021, I have been impressed by their adaptability, dedication, and hard work. However, Administrator Criswell and I recognize that much has been asked of them, and we are committed to supporting the FEMA workforce in every way possible. As the former Secretary of Public Safety in North Carolina, I understand, like many of you, how disasters impact communities. FEMA personnel meet people on what is likely the worst days of their life. Our workforce demonstrates the very best in America. Thank you for the opportunity to testify.
I thank the witness for his testimony. I will remind the subcommittee that we will each have 5 minutes to question our witness. I will now recognize myself for questions. Deputy Administrator, for consecutive years now, FEMA has pivoted from one emergency to another, in part driven by the impact of climate change. You shared the administrator's feelings about the threat of climate change. What are the top workforce challenges FEMA is currently facing? How is the agency addressing those challenges? And the bottom line, Deputy Administrator, does FEMA have a sufficient workforce to fulfill its obligations?
Thank you, Madam Chair. You certainly recognize the challenges that face not only FEMA, but really face the nation. Those challenges of the dynamic and severity of storms has certainly increased, and meeting those challenges head on is what FEMA is charged to do. Since my time in coming to the agency in December, I have witnessed a dedicated and committed workforce that has worked tirelessly to meet those challenges, but recognize that those challenges are many. And so with that, we are constantly evaluating our readiness, our cycles in which we allow our employees and valued staff to rest. And we are also working diligently to increase our workforce. As you noted in your opening comments, we have made many strides to improve our workforce numbers, to improve our staffing levels. And so we are working through a number of communities, direct hires in local communities, partnering with HBCUs to create that pipeline to establish a new broader base of employees, a ready, willing, and able workforce to move us toward the future.
So, Deputy Administrator, I mean, you're absolutely correct that the intensity of the major disasters that we are facing, man-made threats, as we've mentioned as well, COVID-19. But my question, do you believe that FEMA has a sufficient workforce? You've talked about the dedication of the men and women, and certainly I know every member on both sides of the aisle in this committee share that sentiment about the dedication, but do you feel that FEMA has a sufficient workforce to meet the ever-increasing challenges?
Ma'am, the most specific answer I could give to that is a process that is ongoing. As threats emerge, we have to constantly evaluate the staffing model that we have in place and our readiness to take on those challenges. We have certainly risen to the challenge, but it has worn in our workforce. And so we are trying to make those smart investments into our readiness plan, into our readiness cycle, and also the development of new employees so that when a new disaster hits, that they are not just on the roll, but they are ready to meet disaster survivors where there are. And so we are getting better each and every day because we're making those investments in their training, as I referred to earlier. And so the nature of disasters move, very dynamically. And sometimes we meet those disasters in a way that is fully to our satisfaction, but we always want to do more.
We've also talked about the challenges of a reservist workforce, the lack of perhaps sufficient benefits, support for those employees, the challenges of recruitment, training, retention. Could you talk a little bit about that and what steps you are taking to kind of mitigate those challenges with keeping a resilient reservist workforce?
Yes, ma'am, that is certainly a challenge. Just like the military relies on reserves, FEMA has relied on a ready reserve force to protect our nation and to respond to disasters. But unlike the military, unfortunately, our workforce and for our reserves do not have USERRA-like protections that would allow them to go back to their jobs and have their jobs maintained for them while they are supporting the nation. I am aware that
Deputy Administrator, let me ask you, do you believe that you have the authority, that FEMA has the authority to address that issue that you just spoke of?
Not within ourselves. We are working diligently with the Congress, and it's my understanding that the Senate has already made some positive steps with the passage of the CREW Act, and so it is in the Congress's hands to move forward to ensure that that our reserve workforce is strong, willing, and able to move forward.
Thank you so much. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, the gentlewoman from Florida, Ms. Kamick, for questions.
Thank you, Chairwoman Demings. And I'm actually going to follow up on the questions and the line of questioning that you were going down, talking about workforce challenges, talking about the reservist issues that FEMA faces. And, you know, I share the same concerns that you do, that you have as well. So as a follow-up to that, I would like to ask, in the communities that make up our nation, and you mentioned so many of the reservists have other jobs, and it's really a challenge in trying to figure out how we can make up this necessary workforce with reservists and full time. But in communities across the country, including mine, community colleges and vocational education programs are critically important to helping ensure that our local industries and businesses are able to meet the workforce needs. So can you speak to how FEMA is utilizing our community colleges around the country to really bolster the efforts of FEMA in addressing so many of the different disasters that our country is facing?
Yes, thank you so much, Ranking Member Kamick. I agree with you that community colleges play a critical role at preparing the workforce. I come from the state of North Carolina, where we have a robust community college system as well. And FEMA is endeavoring to work across the country with community colleges, because those are areas where key skills and developments can be made. And so that outreach is ongoing. It's a process. Many community colleges already pre-subscribe for what curriculum that we teach. But in order to professionalize the emergency management further, we have to be in our community colleges as well as our universities to offer the training and the education to provide that ready workforce to meet the needs of the nation.
So as a follow-up to that, specifically, what programs are you promoting, and how are you promoting the programs through the community colleges? Are there certificate initiatives that FEMA puts a premium on? Just looking for some more in the weeds and in depth about what these programs are.
All right, Ranking Member Kamick, if you would give me an opportunity to get back with staff, and so I can get you some more granular and specific information, we'll be sure to get that information to you as part of the assessment that I've been doing since I've been here. The just over 2 months, I have been engaged in a lot of the broader context. So as we move toward the weeds, which are necessary because the devil oftentimes is in the details as to how we move positively forward, I promise that we will get a more specific answer back to you as to what that specific engagement is with our community colleges.
I appreciate that. And I'm gonna redirect here to the RAND report that a lot of this hearing is centered around. So we know that this report entitled Harassment, Discrimination on the Basis of Gender and Race, Ethnicity in the FEMA Workforce, that examined the climate of different levels of leadership within the agency. And many people found that their immediate supervisor and FEMA leadership, they had a more positive impression of immediate supervisors rather than the leadership. So can you speak to the steps specifically that FEMA is taking in your office, as well as Administrator Criswell, to improve not just having a positive perception, but meaningful change in garnering a more trustworthy leadership at the highest levels of FEMA? We might be having technical difficulties. Chairwoman Demings, I think we lost our witness.
Deputy Administrator Hooks, are you still with us? Okay. Staff has informed me that we have encountered technical issues. We will now go into recess until those issues are resolved. I ask that the members please keep your cameras on, your microphones muted. We will notify you as soon as this issue is resolved. Members, thank you so much for your patience. This is such an important topic. We'll be back soon. Thank you.
Thank you.
The Subcommittee on Emergency Response and Preparedness will again come to order. We are out of recess. Deputy Administrator, I believe that you were in the middle of answering a question. Please proceed.
Well, we actually froze while Representative Kamek was, let's turn that on. We actually froze while Representative Kamek was posing her question, and so if she
Okay.
could finish that, I guess.
Ranking member, if you
My
would please.
apologies for asking
Not a problem.
Gentlewoman.
Ranking member, please go ahead. We'll adjust the clock accordingly.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Chairwoman Demings, and Deputy Administrator Hooks. I know how frustrating it can be trying to get everything out in the short period of time, along with technical difficulties. Really, the genesis of my question was, as part of the findings with the RAND study that came out, there was a significant discrepancy between the trustworthiness and support of employees with their immediate supervisor versus the higher echelons of leadership within the agency. So I was asking specifically what initiatives you and your office, as well as the administrator's office, is taking to really reestablish and pivot from the top to ensure that employees feel that they are supported, and that culture change is taking place all the way through all levels of the agency.
Again, thank you for. All right.
Feel like we're in a karaoke bar.
Yes. Yeah.
If it helps while we navigate some of these technical challenges, I'm happy for you to issue a response in writing.
Thank you. We can certainly follow up. All right. I'm hoping that we have it solved. Again, my deepest apologies, particularly on such a very important issue. I would say this is that, again, as I described, I came to FEMA approximately 2 months ago, but in my career in law enforcement and public safety in North Carolina, I have a proud record of dealing with issues of sexual harassment and discrimination, but beyond that, empowering the workforce so that women in particular can feel that they have a safe place to work, a place to thrive, a place to grow, and that they can contribute to the overall important mission of public safety and emergency management. I certainly learned of the findings of the RAND report during the confirmation process and was deeply troubled by what I had read and described behaviors. But what I also learned is that FEMA has taken many strides, and Administrator Criswell has led the way. She came to FEMA approximately a year before I arrived there, and embedded in our strategic plan. We talked earlier, the chairwoman talked about the cultural improvement plan. Well, that cultural improvement plan is now part of our overall strategic plan, is embedded in the fabric of what we do day to day, so that nobody thinks that this is some isolated program that we deal with issues of harassment and sexual misconduct within our agency, or any misconduct within the agency. So we want that strong thread woven throughout everything that we do. And we have done things such as requiring harassment training for all employees, conducting listening sessions for FEMA staff, conducting exit interviews of people who have left staff, because it has often been said that people sometimes don't leave organizations, that people leave people. And so we want to get at the heart as to why we are losing valued employees. And I also think that as we improve the dynamics, the professionalism, and the diversity of FEMA, that will go a long way to ensuring that everyone feels that they are valued, that they have a place to thrive, whether they're in the minority, majority, whether that's gender, race, or ethnicity, that FEMA is here to serve the American public and to do it with distinction. And I will demand no less of anybody that works around me and with me. But I recognize, and am very upfront and frank with the staff, that it's not enough that we have a female visionary at the lead of the agency, or that I come in with my background and being an ethnic minority. This is an American issue that we must take on together, and we're up to that challenges. And I have a history of holding supervisors accountable throughout the ranks to ensure that we have a healthy organization. Because if we're not healthy internally, we cannot begin to adequately implement programs prescribed by Congress.
I appreciate your answer and your thoroughness and your patience in navigating the technical challenges. With that, Chairwoman Demings, I yield back.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New Jersey, Mr. Payne, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Sir, in your testimony, you state that compared to 2016, FEMA has had more than twice as many staff deployed every day of the year for 4 years, and that FEMA must expand its approach to agency readiness and to national preparedness. Can you describe for the committee what this expanded approach consists of?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It is multifaceted. As we have improved our ability and to hire within the local communities, that enhances our readiness, because we are hiring individuals who are familiar with those communities that they serve. And I think that that is a critical part of enhancing our readiness. We have individuals who are trusted voices in their communities, who come from those communities, and some of them may even been disaster survivors themselves. So they are really in touch with those communities that they serve. But that's not enough, because we have to make sure that they're adequately trained and ready to provide the services. So in the training program that I described earlier, that we are enhancing in a very robust way to reach out to those new employees to ensure that they have the skills that they need to immediately impact the communities in which they serve. I am particularly in tune with this because what I have told valued staff throughout FEMA is that whereas I come in as the deputy director with over 3 decades of experience, I'm a new employee too. So I'm learning as I lead. And so the challenge for them is to equip our new employees with the skills that they need to meet disaster survivors where they are. We also have to improve, and we have been improving, on our relationships with our emergency managers all across the nation. I think that that is fostered by the experience of Administrator Criswell, coming from a local agency and background, and I hope to add into that thought process as well, bringing a perspective of the states and territories to FEMA and combine it with that federal expertise with professional staff to drive our nations forward. So all of these things go into our readiness. We have a complete division that is part of their commitment is evaluating the readiness of our staff to ensure that they can respond effectively and efficiently to all hazards that may be presented to them. They are constantly working at evaluating where we're at and how we're doing, and we get inputs and after action plans for every disaster so that we can determine how we can do things better. I also have experience because I was the executive civilian authority for the National Guard under the governor's control in North Carolina. And so I am relying on some experiences and the models that are in place with the National Guard as they have taken on the challenges of readiness in their reserve workforce as well.
Thank you for that. My second question, during our January workforce hearing, I spoke with GAO's Chris Curry and former Administrator Fugate about the burnout and mission impacts of rapid redeployments on employee performance and FEMA's ability to meet its mission. 2020 and 2021 included record-breaking disasters that strained the FEMA workforce. How has FEMA dealt with the back-to-back deployments during the past year to address burnout and improve employee performance?
Thank you, sir, and certainly understanding the experience and expertise that Mr. Fugate brings to the discussion. And FEMA has concurred with the recommendations made by the GAO in May of 2020 concerning our workforce. And we agree with the challenges that are before us. And so we want to ensure that we equip leaders with the knowledge and skills that they need to deploy the specific resources to the communities that are in need. And so that we have to make smarter investments as to how we deploy to make sure that individuals, as much as possible, can get a rest in between cycles. It is not unlike the many challenges that, again, the National Guard faces in how to continue to have a ready workforce based on the number of missions before that. And so it begins with leadership to understand that we have to develop our new and emerging staff so that we're just not always calling up the same staff time and time again. We are bringing these people into the workforce, so we have to equip them early with the skills, knowledge, and expertise early in their careers and give them an opportunity to grow and with complete oversight, because we still want the highest level of service to disaster survivors possible and not continually call on the same individuals. And we need to look within the agency if there are certain pockets within the agencies that have not deployed in a while, and we have repeatedly been riding the same horse, so to speak, then we need to continue to look at that as well.
Thank you. And yeah, I think you need to project into the future based on 2021 that this is going to be the way it is moving into the future with, continual redeployments. And so you need to keep that in mind as you prepare for the future, that this might be the standard, the usual of what is going to happen for the agency. So thank you, Madam Chair. With that, I'll yield back.
The gentleman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Higgins, for 5 minutes.
I thank my friend and colleague, Chairwoman Demings and Ranking Member Kamek. Thank you for holding today's follow-up hearing. When a natural disaster happens, whether it's a hurricane, a tornado, a winter storm, wildfire, the destruction is immediately felt by the community, by the families that live there. But these disasters often affect the country as well. As a community looks to recover, one significant issue is navigating the complexity of FEMA's disaster recovery programs. Southwest Louisiana is no stranger to destructive storms, and we have vast experience as part of our culture, working with state and federal agencies to recover. Still, the overall message that I hear from the citizens that I serve and the communities that I represent is quite negative regarding FEMA and their interactions with FEMA. And we have delays in getting applications approved, a lack of customer service. You know, we all recognize that COVID was a part of that, but it's still a reality we have to deal with. Navigating FEMA's bureaucracy has been a very much a challenge for recovery for my state and the district that I serve. While I appreciate FEMA putting together a strategic plan to address staffing issues, I'm concerned that there's too much focus on issues like climate resilience, while other needed areas of reform go unaddressed. In my opinion, FEMA should first hire the necessary staff to work through the backlog casework and public assistance applications for disaster-related reimbursements. Delays in this process are too frequent and can be detrimental to the success of a community's recovery mission. I would like to mention to our witness here today, Ms. Hooks. I've had some very positive interactions with FEMA. So let me mention a compliment, because it can work when we work together. On October the 5th last year, I delivered a letter to Ms. Criswell, your colleague, regarding some specific applications that had been languishing, shall we say, in the bureaucracy. And 2 days later, on October the 7th, we received resolution for those things, and the official announcement resolving those issues. So I'm going to ask for your help, good lady, again. We have some specific issues. The Port of Lake Charles has millions and millions of dollars, $40–50 million of recovery projects that are hung up. Specific projects. I'm gonna ask our chair lady to allow entry to the official record a letter from the Port of Lake Charles referencing those pending and languishing applications, and a letter from my office officially requesting specific assistance, which again we've had success with in the past with FEMA. So
Without objection, so moved.
Thank you, Chairwoman. The Port of Lake Charles, if they can't recover, the economic recovery of the entire region is impacted, and indeed the nation. Lake Charles is the epicenter for energy export, for LNG, for the entire nation. So I ask for the indulgence of our witness today. I'm asking for the Consolidated Resource Center to take specific action on these matters that will be delivered to your office today. Deputy Administrator Hook, I very much appreciate you being here today. I've enjoyed working with your boss, Administrator Criswell. I really hope that we can resolve these things. We must. The economic prosperity of the entire state and indeed the nation is impacted based upon our performance here together. You'll be receiving my official questions for the record in the next couple of days. I look forward to our staffs working together, and I very much appreciate Chairwoman Demings and Ranking Member Kamek for holding today's hearing. And I yield, Madam Chair.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from New Jersey, Ms. Watson Coleman, for 5 minutes.
Well, thank you, Chairwoman, for bringing us together. Thank you to the ranking member, and of course to you, Mr. Hooks. I've got a number of questions. I'm probably going to run through them. You might want to write them down. First one I want to do is to bring attention to you a letter that I sent to Ms. Griswold on February 14th on behalf of all of the New Jersey delegation. And we were writing FEMA to expedite its information to HUD so that HUD could allocate the money for the disasters which occurred in 2021. I would like to know the status of that letter, and I'd like to know, is there a deficiency in staffing, even in the administration of FEMA, that would somehow delay a response to a request as of this nature. I also would like unanimous consent, Madam Chair, to enter this letter into the record.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, ma'am. I understand there's something like 22,000 positions already in FEMA. I am interested in a couple of things. Number one is I'm interested in the kind of skills you are looking for and who you are hiring and at what levels. And number two, I am looking to understand how you are approaching the better numbers in diversity in leadership. Because the information that I have suggests that there's something like 71% of the leadership in FEMA is white and male. And that certainly isn't a reflection of A, the places in which there have been multiple devastations, but B, our country as a whole. So I would like very much to understand what we're doing specifically and how successful FEMA has been in greater diversity. The last thing I would like to understand is, do you believe that there's an assessment being done on streamlining your process? Because sometimes people get very confused about how to actually access resources, what resources they are entitled to, etc. And lastly, I'm not sure how many questions you're going to be able to answer, but I do want to say that I'm also grateful to FEMA because FEMA has stood in the gap in some very important areas in New Jersey and helped us through some very devastating times. So while I ask these pointed questions, in no way, shape, or form do I want you to think that I don't have an appreciation and a respect for the work that you all do. I don't know if you want to answer those questions later or what.
Well, it will be a combination of things, but again, thank you for your questions and thank you for your unwavering support for our mission and our workforce. I don't have specific insight into the specific letter that you have written to Administrator Criswell, but I will certainly loop back in with her on that. I do expect that a number of issues that we are working with HUD on the HUD issue, I expect that resolution will come to bear soon. Concerning diversity, overall, FEMA's workforce is pretty diverse, but as you move up the ranks, that diversity wanes. There are certain levels in FEMA that do not have the diversity that reflect the diversity that we would like to see. Because it doesn't reflect the diversity, the rich diversity of our nation. Some of those positions are forward facing in our disaster response. And so one of the areas that I have tasked specifically, many of our professionals with is looking at what are either some barriers that prevent or women or minorities from moving toward those forward-facing positions of authority out in the public, and what can we do to foster a better culture of diversity? Again, it's not enough for the agency lead to be a female and for me to be a racial minority, but I have seen at the top that the appointments and the hires made, appointments by the president and the hires made by Administrator Criswell, is that we have a very diverse leadership at present time, but that needs to transcend throughout the ranks, and the middle has to meet what we see at the very top and what we are bringing into our workforce.
Thank you, Mr. Hooks. I would very much like to know the specifics of that, the categories in which you have the diversity, the categories in which you are looking. And I still very much would like to understand the kind of skill sets you all are looking for in FEMA at every level, just as information so that I can be more helpful to you in the future. With that, I yield back. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The gentlewoman's time has expired. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Iowa, Ms. Miller Meeks, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair Demings and Ranking Member Kamek, and I thank you for bringing us together for this important testimony. Iowa certainly, like Louisiana, as we heard from Representative Higgins, is no stranger to natural disasters, be they floods, be they tornadoes, be they derechos. We've certainly had our share of those. And I appreciate the comments and the questions in addressing the workforce in FEMA and workplace shortages and labor shortages that you have available, and then also the diversity of talent that's necessary. One of the other things that we do in Homeland Security is cybersecurity. We address cybersecurity, and we certainly have had many hearings on that in the past year, this legislative session. And we've seen cybersecurity attacks with the Colonial Pipeline, which tremendously affected the Eastern Seaboard. And we've also seen the JBS attacks, which affected my own region, as I have meat producers within my congressional district. So I think increasingly the public, both on a personal level for their own security of their own financial records and on a national security level, are very interested in cybersecurity. And in your testimony, you highlighted the importance of having professionals who can facilitate data and information sharing within FEMA's IT infrastructure. The FY 2022 President's budget request includes an increase of 20 positions, 10 full-time employees, and $26.7 million to support FEMA's cybersecurity program. Given the past issues FEMA has had with safeguarding personal information, what specific initiatives will FEMA be focusing on, and how is FEMA working with other DHS components to strengthen its IT workforce? And do you have the facility to hire the types of people with the expertise that are needed?
Thank you, Madam Representative. Thank you for the question. A very poignant and timely question at this time in our history. You know, we have often been saying that cyber threats are an emerging threat. My view is that it's no longer an emerging threat. It's a persistent threat, and one that impacts both government and non-government and civilians alike. We are pleased to see the positions being made available through the offering of the budget, and there has been a greater emphasis within our own IT infrastructure division to improve cybersecurity. We want to make sure that we protect our systems, and we also need to double down and protect our the ability to protect personal identifiable information for those impacted, for disaster survivors, because we don't want them victimized a second time. We are working very closely with CISA, who is a sister agency within the Department of Homeland Security, and following all those advisements that CISA leads on to make us a more protected and resilient nation. That also applies to us, because we can effectively deliver on our mission if we have gaps that make us vulnerable to the many threats that are out there, be it from individuals, criminal organizations, or nation states. And so that is something I'm very mindful of with my history as the State Homeland Security Advisor in North Carolina. That's something that we talk with all our state partners about, and it is an emphasis of our grant programs moving forward as prescribed by the Secretary for our Homeland Security grants. And so we are very mindful of protecting our own systems and promulgating that idea to our local and territorial partners.
And do you believe that your hiring processes will permit you to hire the individuals with the expertise needed in a timely fashion, or are there barriers that we need to consider modifying?
The barrier is always competing against the private sector because they face these challenges as well. And so issues of compensation and all of those things, those are sometimes things that are out of FEMA's direct hands. But what I can have a direct impact on is that people see this as an opportunity to serve our nation in a mighty way that goes above and beyond salary consideration, so that they are a part of something larger in our FEMA mission, and again, in a workplace where they feel valued and that they know that their contributions are lending toward a safer America. But compensation helps.
Well, thank you very much, and I thank you for your diligence in both protecting the system and people's personal information. So thank you, Chair Demings. I yield back my time.
The gentlewoman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentlewoman from Texas, Ms. Jackson Lee, for 5 minutes.
My pleasure to have the opportunity, Madam Chair.
Okay, welcome.
Thank you so very
Our
much.
first witness on the second is Maya.
Members are reminded to please mute your microphones, please mute.
So,
Arab American Institute, partisan national civil rights advocacy organization founded to nurture and
Members
encourage
are please reminded
participation
to mute your
in political and civil
microphones.
life.
can you hear me? To be on this hearing to discuss with the Deputy Administrator the importance of recruitment, training, and retention. First, I'd like to say, Deputy Administrator Hooks, that being in a targeted disaster region, certainly the region is not a disaster because of the wonderful people, but it is because we are subject to natural disasters really almost on an annual basis. And so we have ourselves interacted with those persons that have represented FEMA. Most of them, I understand, temporary employees. I do want to say that they have come energetic, with a great desire to be helpful, and with a great deal of passion. I'm reminded of Hurricane Harvey, when they literally had to be with us for months, and Hurricane Katrina, when we moved 250,000 people out of Louisiana, in particular New Orleans, and they came to the Houston, Harris County area. And they literally had to be with us for a number of years. So I appreciate the work that is being done. And I'm going to pose my questions along the lines of legislation that I am introducing or have introduced. And with a nod to the chairwoman, I'm hoping that we will have an opportunity for a hearing dealing with HR 3060, the FEMA Modernization Act, where we're looking at, a number of members are looking at some of these issues of improving the disaster response office, having ombudsmen, establishing a new natural disaster medical triage capacity, establishing a program to provide education and job training, provide for accurate reporting on deaths and missing persons, and collecting data. I say that to say that that means an increase in FEMA staffing, employees of many different skills. So let me start by your thoughts about developing a permanent staff that deals with disasters. My understanding is that they're recruited for each disaster. So I'm interested in your thoughts about that. And then I'm also interested in your staffing of individuals that are able to deal with the multi-generational population and multilingual population that they come upon during disasters. Would you start with that, Administrator Hooks?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for your time and attention to the many issues that face FEMA. I am certainly aware that FEMA staff, upon my arrival here, have been educated that they have been working with your staff on potential legislation, and we are committed to continue to work with your staff and you and any member's staff to advance the modernization of FEMA. I have seen in my brief time here a number of staff that have moved from being a local hire to move on into a full-time career. And that's when I talked earlier of creating that pipeline. We need to create that pipeline of local community hires that are vested in those communities, that understand those communities. That is but one of those pipelines, but we have to make those investments in those skills and abilities, because FEMA does have a large missing set. And so those may be intake, those may be planning and all those. And so there are a number of variety of skills that need to be taught to new hires so that they can avail themselves to full-time employment with FEMA. And so we do have vacancies and we try to fill them that way. Our outreach to technical and community colleges, as described by the ranking member, and I promise to give her some more additional information about what specifics FEMA is doing with that, is similarly important, as well as our outreach to HBCUs, because as we reach those organizations that have a mind's eye on serving underserved communities, we can more greatly impact our nation. And again, they come with a variety of skill sets. Sometimes that skill set are hard skills about learning how to use the various systems, but they can also be soft skills of how to communicate with the public. You know, having, I wouldn't necessarily call it a skill, but a heart for people and empathy and to meet people where they are. And also, all of this flows together. None of it works in a vacuum. Is that we have to tie this into our readiness cycle so that people know that if I go to FEMA, that yes, I can and subject to be deployed, but there will be times for rest and restoration. And so we're making assessments on their readiness. We are making assessments to support them for their mental and physical health so that they can continue to support the communities that we must reach all across the country.
Thank you. There was another question, Madam Chair, but I don't know whether he heard the question on intergenerational staffing to work with people of all ages.
Madam Chair, I'm not able to hear the chairwoman. Madam Chair, we're not hearing you.
I'm sorry. Can you hear me now?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, I would ask that the Deputy Administrator please submit the answer to Ms. Jackson Lee's question in writing. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from, thank you. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from New York, Mr. Garbarino, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairwoman. And thank you, for coming here today. I have a follow-up question with what my colleague from Iowa was asking regarding cybersecurity. And we talked about what FEMA was doing for its own cyber programs. But Chairwoman Clark and I just recently passed a state and local cybersecurity grant program, which would implement it's about $1 billion. We got it signed into law, and it's imperative in increasing resilience in our communities, especially in the light of recent attacks from Russia and other foreign adversaries. FEMA is supposed to work closely with CISA in the implementation of this bill. Do you believe FEMA has the workforce, the appropriate adequate personnel needed to implement this program? And how can we be more helpful in any coordination between FEMA and CISA in ensuring that this grant program runs pretty smoothly?
Thank you, sir. I certainly appreciate the question, Mr. Representative. The Homeland Security Grant and cyber grants in particular are extremely helpful to our state, territorial, and local partners. And the administration of those grants is critically important in that we adequately communicate to our local partners. And we are well postured and currently working diligently with CISA on those very issues in the administration of those grants. Under the common authority of the Secretary of Homeland Security, both agencies are committed to delivering for our nation on those grants as well, because we certainly understand the importance, and there are many communities that simply cannot fortify their own cybersecurity posture without that life-sustaining funding for those grants. And so I'm deeply appreciative. We do have the staff to execute on those grant priorities as well. The communities are certainly in need, and I'm sure they are will be certainly appreciative of those funding dollars getting down to those communities to help improve their cyber posture as well.
I appreciate that answer, and thank you very much. And again, if we can be any more helpful in making sure that this program and any other programs dealing with cyber runs more smoothly, please let us know. On a separate note, in your testimony, you discussed the role FEMA plays in strengthening the emergency management workforce across the country, My district on Long Island suffered immense losses from Superstorm Sandy almost 10 years ago, and it's sad to say this, but many are still rebuilding their homes and businesses. Even, we still haven't even fixed half the roads as hurricane seasons continue to batter the communities year after year. Can you discuss what specific ways FEMA is helping emergency management teams at the state and local level to help increase resilience to mitigate the impacts of future storms like Sandy?
Yes, sir. One of the seminal ways that FEMA can be of assistance beyond just the transmission of funding is being well partnered and understanding those communities. FEMA has engaged over the last few years of what we call the FIT program, FEMA Integration Program, where we have FEMA employees embedded with state emergency managers all across the country to help better understand their needs. And we listen to those state directors, and that is an ongoing process of what they need to help augment, not supplant, but augment their ability to mitigate disasters before they start. We certainly recognize that an investment on the front end of $1 will save $6 on the back end. And so we lean in heavily toward those hazard mitigation investments on the front end and maintain healthy and robust partnerships is our fervent endeavor throughout the entire process. So again, coming back to FEMA's mission to helping people before, during, and after storms. So we have that three-tiered mission that requires us to be there with our partners on blue sky days, the planning and execution and anticipation of storm, the storm response, and the recovery. And I understand that the recovery sometimes can be extremely frustrating because it never can come soon enough for disaster survivors. You know that in New Jersey, I knew that in North Carolina, and I'm thankful that the entire committee is in tune with it.
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. I yield back.
The gentleman yields back. The chair now recognizes the gentleman from Texas, Mr. Green, for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Am I audible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you much. And I thank the administrator for appearing today. I greatly appreciate this opportunity because there are many things that are of concern to me. So I'll move as expeditiously as possible. Let's start with linguistics. I have one of the most diverse districts in the country. We have the ballot printed in 4 languages, English, Spanish, Vietnamese, and Chinese. And when we have these unfortunate circumstances, let's call them acts of God. I think legally they're called that in many circles. When we have these acts of God, we oftentimes find ourselves with people coming to our office who want help, but they don't seem to be able to have someone to help them in a language that they're familiar with. And we have to find people sometimes to assist. But what do you do, or how do we help you with the linguistics aspects of this, please?
Well, thank you, Representative. Certainly an important area that we must discuss, because if we can't effectively communicate with the people in need, we can't effectively deliver the programs to the people that oftentimes need them the most and who have been impacted the most. I would say that overall, as we look at the diversity of FEMA, that nearly 13% of our staff speak Spanish. So we have to be smart about our deployment so that we really understand those communities of deployment, so that we deploy the sufficient number of Spanish-speaking and culturally competent individuals to deal with those particular unique needs. Actually, the 13% is in line with the percentage of U.S. population, but understanding that you're talking about a more concentrated population in the areas that you so nobly serve. At our disaster recovery centers, we have translators available not just for Spanish, but for a number of languages, including sign language. And if we don't have someone on site that is well versed in a particular language, we're able to set up the virtual calls to be able to better communicate with them. If COVID has presented any one positive, save for the technical difficulties we've had today. We have learned to utilize the virtual platforms for greater engagement. And so we will continue to actually pick up lessons learned through tragedies in providing virtual platforms and communications and translations for disaster.
Mr. Deputy Director, if I may, I greatly appreciate your answer. I have two other areas that I'd like to get into, so let me move quickly and simply ask this question. When you are in need in a given area of persons to work on a given disaster, how can I impact that process by recommending people, helping you to acquire personnel from the area who will understand not only the language, but they know a little bit about the geography, and there may be other things that they'll know that you just don't get by having a person who speaks a language. So is there a way for us to help you with that? And if there is, could you tell me quickly, because I have two other areas.
Yes, sir. Probably the best way and most expedient way is to ensure that the state local emergency management knows what those local resources are, because they'll be in tune with the entire community and can relate that to us.
All right, thank you very much. Let's talk quickly about signing bonuses. I was at an event just recently with another member of the administration, and it was a great event. We had people who actually work for the government explaining some of the problems that they're having in terms of recruitment. And apparently in Houston, there are signing bonuses being given to persons in a given area in the private sector, and the public sector can't match those signing bonuses. Is there something that we can do to help you there? I understand loyalty to country and persons want to be of help, but those signing bonuses are quite appealing, Mr. Administrator. And I'm just curious as to, is there something we can do to help you with that?
Yes, sir. We are totally reliant upon the appropriations that are allotted to us from.
Something has happened to the quality of your voice. I can't hear you.
All right, I'm sorry for the technical difficulties, but we are reliant upon congressional approval and congressional authorities. And so any discussion that you would have that would help benefit us in attracting a greater workforce, and that includes compensation, we welcome those discussions.
Okay, I have 2 seconds, 1 second, and I won't get to my last topic. I'll ask that I be permitted to send something to you in writing. Thank you, Madam Chair.
The gentleman yields back. And with that, I want to thank the Deputy Administrator for his valuable testimony. And I want to thank the members for their questions. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions, and I know that you do, for the witness. And we ask that you respond expeditiously in writing to those questions. The chair reminds members that the committee record will remain open for 10 business days. Without objection, the subcommittee stands adjourned.